Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks.
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks. I wanted to have a brief discussion about Puff Daddy's new Variety article where he talks about the lack of support by white capital for black business. This is after he talked all that black excellence. And he also talks about how white capital refuses to allow black executives to become CEOs of their companies, all while we gotta look at Revolt TV. So just to be fair, let's start off, give his quote a read from Variety. You know, they did this spread on him about how he slams them for not investing in black executives. And this comes a week after Revolt TV, you know, has hired an Indian executive that has fired, supposedly, purportedly, a large bulk of the black staff at Revolt TV. And Revolt TV is supposed to be the venture that Puff Daddy owns, and we'll get into that in a second. But before we do, let's look at this Variety article, and I want to read a section from you. You have these record companies, these are the words of Sean Combs' Puff Daddy, that are making so much money off our culture, our art form, but they're not investing or believing in us, says Combs. For all the billions of dollars that these black executives have been able to make them, to put them in the top level positions, there's still hesitation. They'll go and they'll recruit cats from overseas. So these are the words of Puff Daddy. He also spoke to like Black Panther for some reason. I don't know if he understands that Disney owns Marvel, owns Black Panther, and that at the end of the day, if you want to talk about black people creating something, they have to create their own superhero. Black Panther was made by Jack Kirby, a white man. So that's the other thing in this article. But getting to the main crux of it, what you see is this understanding of finally the limitations of black capital. So for a decade, he's been talking about how black people can do it on their own. Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, I see the limitations. Maybe we need to recognize that white capital controls black capital, and they need to do us. They need to treat us fairly in the marketplace. The problem is that you're the problem, Puff Daddy. In so many ways, they have used Puff Daddy and people like him to cover up the lack of black wealth. I said it in The Decadent Veil. I talked to Byron Allen about it in his lawsuit. And now here we are with Puff Daddy, the guy who kind of has been a hazard sign for any kind of big discussion about the lack of black wealth, with his constant projection of the idea that he has wealth, trying to admit that white folks have all the money. Look, Puff Daddy, step to the side, let Sandy Darity, Byron Allen, or myself talk, because you've been talking way too much all over the place. And so for me, I look at the rest of this comment and he says, it makes sense to give executives of color a chance and embrace the evolution. Instead of it being that we can only make it to president, senior VP, there's no black CEO of a major record company. How can a guy who hired an Indian to run Revolt TV then say that none of these companies have a black CEO? It makes no sense. I mean, when you think about the other big issue, he switches between executives of color, and this is the problem with the whole people of color like statement, is that no, we're descendants of American slavery, American DOS, and we have a unique and very, very costly claim on this country, and this country shutting us out of opportunities. Here you have a guy switching between black executives, executives of color. Then you look over and we can't help but bring up the Revolt TV article that came out last week. And you have to wonder, why did Variety do this story? You have Variety writing the story. There's nothing big that came out from this story that deserved for Puff Daddy to get an article on Variety, other than, is this a cover up for what happened last week with Revolt TV? So we look over at Revolt TV, and there was a great article, pulling it up now, from page 6, and what that article dropped is a bombshell letter by a former employee of Revolt TV. In this letter, what she says outright is that Roma, who's the new CEO is Roma, she's an Indian woman, let 30% of the Revolt TV staff go and restructured, but 99% of those people were African American. So 30% of their African American staff was fired. Come on. Think about what we're saying here. How can you talk about black excellence when you firing black people and you not even doing it? You hired an Indian CEO to fire black people. We're not all people of color, but you the guys talking black excellence. How can you challenge a company, a white company, to hire a black CEO when you don't hire a black CEO? I'm just saying. And we continue on with this page 6 article, and it says, the ex-employee wrote to Revolt's board from a place of genuine concern on behalf of myself as a young, educated black woman for the people currently employed at Revolt who are fearful of losing their job in an attempt to preserve the reputation and perception of the company. I've witnessed CEO Roma say that black women intimidate her. Come on. And then at a May brainstorming session for the Revolt Music Conference, when it was suggested that rapper Meek Mill host a talk on prison reform, the Indian CEO Roma responded, maybe the conversation isn't about prison reform, maybe it's about how to stay out of jail, black boy. The memo adds, in my own discomfort, I spoke up saying that her comment was not only insulting, but it was also disrespectful to Meek as he's not a boy. She then proceeded to propose, maybe that's it. Maybe it's a conversation on how not to be black. So this is the problem we got here. In so many ways, like Puff Daddy been out here just covering it all up. I told y'all that first. We here now. At some point, y'all gonna realize how right I am about all this. You got a guy running out, talking about black excellence, talking about we don't have no black wealth, talking about we don't have no CEOs, when he the main reason we don't. We can't do no politics because everybody think we already have wealth. Why? Because he all up in the magazines. You know, you want to dance all everywhere. I come back to it and I'm looking at this thing, and a guy whose own supposed TV company, I say supposed, hired an Indian CEO talking about why companies don't hire CEOs. I'm just saying this thing from a standpoint from either Puff Daddy is slightly crazy or he's very ignorant. And either way, I don't need him speaking for me. I look at my interview with Byron Allen and I remember a specific section. I'm gonna cut that in. And what he spoke to is the reality of how Comcast, how the FCC was trying to use the fact that Puff Daddy existed with Revolt to avoid the fact that there aren't any 100% black-owned TV stations. I want you to listen to that and come back.
I feel it's important that we as a people own and control our image and how we're produced and depicted around the world. And I have said to a lot of people, especially white people, would you be comfortable if I had control over how you were produced and how your children grew up and saw themselves? If they saw themselves as heroes or if they saw themselves as losers. Are you comfortable with that image and me having that control? And unanimously, everyone always says no. And I'd say, then why should I be comfortable letting you have 100% control over how I'm produced and depicted and distributed around the world and how my children grow up and see themselves? So we must own our own networks and our own platforms and websites and publications that we truly own, and we're not a front for wealthy white people, but we truly own it and control the narrative. That is the reason.
Can you explain that a little bit more when you say, because I've heard that before from you, and I think sometimes it gets lost. In more specific sense, can you explain the difference between black targeted and black owned companies?
Black targeted is black targeted. That doesn't mean that the people who actually own it and care about how you're produced and seen own it and control it. I mean, you want that to be authentic. The ownership needs to be, like, I had the pleasure of growing up with Ebony and Jet on my coffee table, and I knew that I could trust that publication because I knew who owned it, and they were really about inspiring the African American community and helping us to go to the next level. And at the same time, they chronicled all of our successes and made sure that we paid respect to the people who deserve that respect, who had gone on to achieve exceptional levels of success. I think it's important that we have that in our community, and unfortunately we don't, because a lot of advertisers have pushed us to the side, and a lot of distribution systems have pushed us to the side. Now, the reason why I sued, now it's a big deal.
Wait, can I ask you one question? Just so the audience who isn't as aware. When we look at BET, when we look at Aspire, are these black targeted or black owned companies?
They're black targeted, and they're black. Viacom owns BET, and Aspire. We're asking through legal documents to understand the relationship of Leo Hendry and Aspire. So we want to know, because we want to have real, authentic, 100% African American ownership of these platforms. We deserve it. Look, the cable industry. This is why I say, hey, black people, wake up and get a calculator. You're a multi-trillion-dollar industry, but you get paid nothing. The cable industry spends $70 billion a year licensing cable networks. $70 billion. Black people get zero. We're the only community that would allow that to happen. No other community would stand for that. We do business with a lot of major corporations. Coca-Cola. They don't spend a nickel with black-owned media for the most part. There are a lot of major corporations out there that pull money out of our neighborhoods, out of our communities, but they're not. See, what happens is, here is that institutionalized racism. When white people talk to other white people about business, they talk about business. When black people go to white corporate America starts talking about charity, donations, and who they've given money to. We're not a charity. We're not a donation. We're not that burden that you need to subsidize because we are a bunch of stupid baboons who can't add 2 + 2. We're a business. We're brilliant. We're resourceful. We're articulate. We're competitive. But white corporate America has a way of treating us like we're a burden and we don't count. And when you look at all the hundreds of billions of dollars that are spent in advertising and none of it going to black-owned media, that speaks to why your newspapers and websites are going out of business and going away, and they don't exist. When you look at $70 billion being spent licensing cable networks and none of it going to black ownership, that speaks to jobs in the community.
Now, as we come back, just understand that Byron Allen, I'll say this as a caveat, he bought the Weather Channel for $300 million cash. He's a billionaire. And I just want to say that when I look at this thing, Diddy, Puff Daddy, has contorted the idea of black ownership from Ciroc to Revolt to a point where we can't have no black ownership. Every time we sue for our own ownership, somebody like him or he himself is trumpeted out by white capital as an example of, we already gave you guys something. That's what happened with Revolt TV when Biden brought lawsuits using slave laws of 1866 to say blacks have been shut out of corporate ownership of television stations. So now you run onto Variety and say, we don't own nothing. Well, you the problem. And so I look at it and everybody asks me for a solution. The solution is to turn off the Puff Daddy. He ain't working no more. He just rambling. I think that people can't have a two-faced presentation. People can't not understand that Black Panther isn't owned by black people and then act like Black Panther was a great representation of what black people do with black ownership. I just wanted to come to you real quick to say, none of this Puff Daddy stuff makes sense. It's a decadent veil that's covering up our black poverty. We ain't living well. We ain't eating well. And I'm here to change all that. Please go to tonetalks.org, subscribe and donate, share this video, and tell Puff Daddy, I'll see you when I see you, bro.
Thank you for tuning in to Tone Talks.